And from outside, if you look from outside, it might look like, who is from Japan here? There's nobody from Japan. But this guy, he just got back from his internship exchange
program
for 5 months in Japan. And he's here today to share his experience about how Japan was, the things, because I think it's different going into a country like Japan for exchange as a European or even an American, because it's not like part of the Western world when you classify it. So people are like, they have a lot of concerns about how things are going to be there.
Well, the thing is that even though I lived in the Netherlands for 4 years, I still come from a background which is like a bit similar to Japan.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an advantage, I would say, for travel. If you go to Japan, it's like it's similar to mine, and plus I have the advantage of living the Western life.
Yeah.
And the Asian. Middle East is a bit similar to Japan. So
I was telling him before this that we got to make this as natural as possible and also as open and honest as possible, because like a lot of times when you have these university introductions, they talk about like how things are going to be in the other country, but there are some things that they don't really want to say in the class, because it's like if it's like something like sexual related, they're going to tell you like what are the cool spots to do. We gotta cut out that.
Academic, bro.
Yeah, it's academic. So they want to make sure that it's strictly academic, and there's some things that they don't want to really share. So that is what we were actually trying to aim. That we want to make sure that we cover all different angles. Okay. So I was wondering if you can share a little bit of your background and why you decided to go to Japan.
So basically, Japan was one of the countries I really wanted to go. East Asia was something very interesting, and many students from Standard University, where I, especially in my major, wanted to go to Bali and some other East Asian countries. But I decided to go somewhere else, and I was looking at Japan. And it's one of the countries I actually wanted to go. I mean, for example, when I was young, I was always interested in the Japanese culture. The language. I've watched so many, for example, cartoons which are related to Japanese. I use, for example, play video games, Sony PlayStation, which originally comes from Japan. So, in general, I'm surrounding myself with Japanese products and Japanese culture and their, basically culture and some of their things or products that they have made.
Okay.
That drove me to actually go there and say, okay, this is where everything comes from, or the things I use at least. So why not go there and check it out myself?
Okay. Can you share a little bit about your background, where you're from?
Well, I'm an Omani student.
Oman, if you don't know, it's in the Middle East. It's next to Qatar. That's where I was born, and that's the most important part of this video. But continue.
Well, yeah, I mean, nobody knows. Not a lot of people know about Oman. That's fortunately the. But yeah,
it's Oman if you want to Google it.
Well, I come from Oman. I live in a capital city called Muscat. But I tend to travel a lot, so you see me everywhere eventually. But I moved to the Netherlands for 4 years to do my bachelor's degree program. Then I went to Japan for almost 5 to 6 months for my exchange program. And then I'm now going to Switzerland for another 6 months to do my internship and my graduation project. So I kind of say I'm an Omani, but my identity now has evolved to several identities. Because I traveled and lived in many countries before.
Okay. So, a lot of people are from the Middle East, go abroad to study. People who look like us. I don't know if that's appropriate for an academic setting to say, but hey, you know what I mean. And if those people have any concern, there are a lot of people who see themselves as a minority, and if they're thinking we're a minority, we're not really sure how it's going to be when you go to Japan, he looks like a minority too. No racial discrimination on tape, but just saying, I look like a minority too. So it's the same. So we have actually we brainstormed a while ago, and we wrote down certain questions. that we can talk about, and I think this is going to help a lot of people just to like clear up things. You can hear someone, talk about it directly. So, first of all, let's start with this. Let's talk about how your expectation was, and then we're going to go into all the questions. And then when we wrap up this video, we're going to talk about reality based on that expectation. Okay. So when you first decided to go to Japan, what was your expectation like?
Well, if, for example, when I got accepted first to go to Japan to study there for 4 months, I was very excited. It was a big challenge in my life, I would say, and it was a good opportunity to go there, check it out. But my expectations were a bit different. For example, I all hear from the media like Japan is very into technology and like into like something which is very different from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Also, like for example, the culture are very collective. They're very like polite. So I expected this, in general, really positive outcomes from Japan.
That was the expectation.
And I really hear many good things about like Japanese people as well. That they're very kind and friendly enough to talk with other people. And they're very good clean society as well. They're very into like helping others as well. And yeah, I mean Japan as well is one of the countries which really is kind of advanced. And it's one of the East Asian countries which are like very advanced. And like I would see it. I also thought like it was a bit kind of Western as well compared to other East Asian countries.
Okay.
So it's a bit advanced, I would say. But yeah, I mean, I had high expectations from Japan.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a timestamp here about the different aspects that we're going to talk about. So yeah, if you feel like, we don't want to know about transportation, I already know. We just want to know about how it is to drink in Japan. You can just go into that minute that you just saw, and yeah, it's going to save a lot of time for you because you don't have to go through the whole video. Okay, so let's just start with, what was it like to arrive in Japan? Like the first time you landed there, and you're used to the Western countries, you're used to the Middle East. What kind of differences did you experience as being there, arriving, touchdown, for the first time? What was that like?
Well, before I came to Japan, one of the staffs of the university said we're gonna drop you to their seminar house, their place where students live. So they're gonna expect me to arrive, and then I'm gonna see one of the staffs, and we're gonna go with them. But yeah, I mean, when I first came to Japan, it was very weird. Not in a bad way though. Okay. It was just different, I would say. Right. Sorry, the weird was a wrong word, I would say.
Okay.
Sorry, Japanese people.
Yeah.
But no, really. It was a bit different. The atmosphere was completely different. It was the airport was very crowded. For many people were coming to Japan that time. But yeah, I mean, the immigration there was it was strict. They even tried to. They saw people who were coming from the Middle East who might suffer from this kind of disease, such as having bad fever or something. So when I came to Japan and I heard all of this, I was kind of freaked out because I might have to take some injections or something, because they say people coming from the Middle East might suffer from some diseases. But I told them it's fine, I have no problems. I even showed them that my medical health insurance and everything, and I did the checkup before I came to Japan, so everything's sorted, But yeah, I mean, the staff were quite friendly, compared to the Netherlands. I would say when I came as a student, for example, they asked me a lot of questions.
We still love the Netherlands, though.
Yeah, it's my home, so. Yeah. I love the Netherlands. No, yo. I mean, I love the Netherlands.
Well,
it's my home.
Right?
But everything has its own thing, Yeah. For example, when I was in immigration, when they checked my passport and my visa, they were very friendly. They're like, yo, welcome to Japan. We were the few Omanis who actually come to Japan who to study there. And they asked me, where are you going to do? And then just simple questions, And they were very yo, just take your bag and head outside wherever you want to go. And then, but the beginning was a bit weird because everything was in Japanese. There were really few English directions, I would say. And not many Japanese people can speak fluent English, so you might have a problem when you ask people around. So you use a lot of hand gestures and and they're very polite that they even take you wherever you go. Okay. For example, when I was with a staff, she was working in a restaurant, and I just asked her a question. And then I asked her, like, yeah, do you know where the bus is, or where the place where I was supposed to meet with my with the university, like the main staff in the university. She literally left her work to just take me there where the stop is, and she said, no, it's fine, like, we want to just help you, we think of others. And she said, like, if you need anything, any help, just contact me. And she gave me her contact details. I was very honored to, or like very appreciated. I really feel appreciated that like that generosity was actually there.
Okay, so in some countries, I don't want to really say what kind of countries it is, they don't speak a lot of English, but they have this this big wall between them and the world. They're like, oh, if you don't speak English, don't with us, that kind of things. And I was wondering how it is in Japan, because how much does the language barrier affect you in terms of like getting around, even if it's just like arriving did like the people in immigration speak proper English though?
Well, it depends. I mean, some of them can understand you enough that when you ask them, but when it comes to like actually having a conversation, few of them really can speak English with you, and not really fluently, but in a way you can have a communication with. But in general, like, I haven't really met a lot of people, like, especially Japanese people, who can speak fluent English.
Okay, I understand.
But the people there expect you to learn Japanese. So when I arrived in Japan, actually, when I met some Japanese students, they asked me the first questions like, yo, did you even learn Japanese? Because it's very important for you. You need to learn it before you at least get to know some basics, get to ask some questions, directions, like simple things, because they say it's very important. Okay. So, yeah, they're very, like, proud of the language.
So directions? What are the things that you
Directions, like, just normal questions like, yo, where can I go there? How much is the price? Can you help me out? Okay. And like, what's your name? Like some random, like, it's very simple questions when you arrive.
Okay, great. Okay, so when it comes to a lot of Asian countries, the rules are so much different than compared to a lot of European and American countries, Western world in general. So let's say someone who has been living in Europe or the United States for their entire life, and they're going to exchange in Japan. What are the things that it might be so normal here, like you would not even think about doing that in a different way, because like, why would you? It's just so normal here. But those things are not really appreciated there. Number one, it's kind of like considered rude, and also you just don't do it in general, Yeah. Let me just give a quick example before you talk about it. We were in Starbucks a while ago, so this guy has been away for a while, and every time we were outside, we are kind of like loud people. We are super loud, and we are like making jokes with everyone, just having fun. And this time what we noticed is when I was making those jokes, he he had kind of like this conservative face all of a sudden. He was just like, as if like he's so embarrassed. And I'm like, why are you acting like a little sheep all of a sudden? And then when we got to talk more about it, he was saying that the reason for that is because in the Japanese culture, there are even rules that sometimes you're not allowed to speak up, like not too much, not too loud. So yeah, if you can include that in the do's and don'ts as well, that would be great, along with other things as well.
Yeah, of course. Like, for example, you cannot be like loud when you speak in public, because like in Japan they're not used to it. Like, for example, when I was going out with my friends, like going around the area where I used to live, just to check out, and some guys went for some drinks in the evening. We met in like there's a small park where we used to live. And then the guys wanted to have some drinks, so we went to the convenience store. It's just like 10 minutes by walk. Then some people were like singing on the way. Some people were like loud, having good laughter. Just like some, like when you go out with your friends, I would say. And but there were people who were with us who lived in Japan for like 6 months before. Said like, you're not supposed to be loud because it's rude and plus you have to think of others. Okay. It's a collective culture, so you have to not just, when you do an action or when you do something, you have to make sure it doesn't affect other people. Okay.
So following up that, so someone like me who is naturally loud, I would be hearing this and I would be like, what is the thin line between being loud and not being loud? Like, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable? Like, I don't want to be there and be so paranoid, like, oh, am I allowed? Am I not allowed? So what is the thin line between us? Like, how can I still get my point across by still not being in trouble?
So, I mean, for example, they know you're a student, and they know you're a foreigner who comes from a different culture, from a different, perception, I would say. So they kind of understand when you do something that, it's not your fault, you know. So when, for example, like you can have a normal conversation like me, like now, like we're doing right now. But let's say when you're like very enthusiastic, when you're very happy, for example, in that moment, you know, your peak or your volume raises to a higher.
Okay.
So they come to you, for example, some people they're like, yo, can you please be a bit quiet? I can give you a really good example.
Okay.
When we were going to the university, we took the bus from our seminar house to the university. It's like just 15 minutes or even less, I would say. Actually, very less. We had some people from, I think, Latin America or something.
They're like naturally loud, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're Latin American or Spanish. I'm so sorry. Yes. And it doesn't matter where they are. They were both very loud, you know. So they went to the bus, and they were speaking loud. They were sharing laughters and just non-stop talking, you know. And in Japan, you can't just talk on the bus. You have to be quiet. Cell phones are not allowed. You can't even when you can't make phone calls. You have to make your phone on silent. You can't disturb others. So when they were talking, one Japanese old gentleman just came, and he was like, "Shut up." And then they were shocked. They were like, "Oh, we didn't expect that from a Japanese person to say to us directly, shut up."
Yeah.
But when they had a Japanese friend with them, she had a conversation with that old gentleman, and then the conclusion was that, oh, you have to think of others when they are there. Okay. Some of them come from a hard time, like come from a job which took them along. Some of them had a bad day, for example. Some of them just want to sleep. So you have to make sure that you think of others when you do something.
Wow, that makes sense. So you don't have to be paranoid, but just make sure that you respect other people's space and not be too loud in public. Maybe just keep that in mind actively. You don't have to be paranoid about that. Is that a right message to give?
Technically.
Okay. So, we were talking about the cost of living.
Well, for example, we lived in a city called Hirakata. It's like one of the regions, one of the cities in Osaka, the prefecture. And it was a residential area, so like it's not like Tokyo or like Kyoto, for example. So the prices were, I would say, reasonable. The only thing I was really complaining was about the transportation. For example, they have the thing called Shinkansen. It's like a train station. And it's very expensive. That you go from here to Tokyo, it's from Hirakata to Tokyo. It's like 2 hours distance, but it's like for $100, for example.
Okay.
The Shinkansen is quite expensive, but as a student there, you get a 30% discount, which is kind of cool. But also
you can be a student in a Japanese university, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an exchange student, then it works.
No, sorry, it's only for exchange students. It's a perk, actually.
Yeah, and you gotta be brown. Just kidding.
No. But like, for example, when I was in Tokyo, like when I buy some clothes, for example, or when I went to some restaurants, they were quite expensive to other cities. So it depends where you are, I would say. But like, I would say like I paid a lot when I came to Japan. Like the flight to Japan itself was very expensive, first of all.
Okay, so you mentioned transportation being one of the expensive factors. Can you think about any other factors that when you compare it with like a European or American world, it's like comparatively a little bit more expensive?
Like, what do you mean?
I don't know, man. Like rent, for example.
Well, for example, rent in Japan. I lived in a student stay kind of thing, like as a campus, I would say. Well, it was a bit expensive compared to like where I used to live in the Netherlands. For example, I lived in a studio in Leeuwarden for like I paid around 500 euros for a really reasonable place. But in Japan, like the rent is a bit expensive, I would say, even for an apartment. And plus, they have some rules for paying like for the owner as well. Yeah. You have to pay a lot when you have an apartment there.
Okay.
But for example, I used to live alone in a room. and I paid a lot compared to where I used to live in the Netherlands. So imagine if I paid 500 euros for a studio, which is like decent, and I live in Japan, which is a bit expensive for a smaller room, and everything's basic there, for example. But yeah, overall, I think it's a bit expensive than the Netherlands, I would say.
Okay. Did you have roommates?
No,
Okay.
but my room was like a living room, I would say.
It was a living room.
Basically, I'm the guy who loves to bring people to my room. I established this idea when I was in the Netherlands. You experienced that as well.
Yeah.
Well, I like to bring like colleagues and friends to my place.
Yeah.
We have some drinks or play some video games.
Drinks?
Just normal drinks, you know. Haram. But like, yeah, just like...
Hey mom, what's up?
No, but just have like, if you want, like, for just a gathering, I would say. You know, I love to bring people around. And I did the same thing in Japan, but like... and the thing is that in Japan, you're not allowed to bring people after 10 o'clock in the evening.
Oh my god, it's like high school rules, man.
Yeah, and they also, like, in the beginning, like, you have to be, like, you know, people normally live with roommates, but I decided to live alone because I can have my own privacy, but at the same time, I can have fun with my friends, I would say.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's get into food. Okay, first of all, we can also mention like the prices of the food, and also I did not just mean the prices, but like anything as a foreigner you go there. And is there any difficulties experienced when you're eating outside, or even when you're cooking? Like how was that?
I mean, like, for example, as I said, everything's in Japanese. If you live there and you want to go to a grocery store, everything's in Japanese. You're like, but of course you can see what you're gonna order. You know, like pastas or like eggs, whatever you want to eat.
Right.
But you can also ask the staff for specifications of like if it's like with this or that or that. They help you. They assist you, no problem. Even though they can't really speak with you, but they can like describe you something. But yeah, like for example, the food there is amazing. I love the Japanese food, especially seafood as well. It's really amazing. In a city called Sapporo, it's like in the north. They have all delicious seafood. But in general, it's quite healthy, and like I didn't really eat a lot of junk food, I would say. Well, technically I did, but it's not as worse as in the Netherlands, I would say, like eating kebabs and doeners and like capsulones.
Nobody knows what a capsulone is.
But we'll describe to you later.
Okay.
We'll go to the next subject, you know.
Okay, next topic.
But like in general, like I love Japanese food. For people who would love to go to Japan, you will have a good time with the food, I would say. But for example, I'm more of eating halal food. And
yes.
Halal food is like a big issue in Japan, I would say. Like,
can you explain what halal food is?
Halal food is basically food that's from an Islamic, like it's like meat, for example, is cut under the Islamic rule.
It's something religious. Yeah.
It's like part of my Islamic religion. When I lived in Japan, I kind of struggled with finding like halal food because there's not a lot of people from like Middle East or like Islamic people who live in Japan. So there's not a lot of like, for example, like Turkish restaurants or so. There are like very few, but they're quite far where I used to live. And I kind of struggled. I went to like Turkish areas and asked them for like any halal stores. They said it's impossible to find it here, or like the regions where I used to live. But there was an Indian restaurant which was actually halal. And then I asked the staff if it's possible to find any halal. So you have to go to another city where they have a very small store for that. So if you are looking for halal food in Japan, yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
But
what about like vegetarians? Do they have like any life in Japan?
No, vegetarian. There are a lot of vegetarians actually, but I mean you can get a lot of vegetarian food. It's no problem. But you know sometimes they put like the it's the oil what they cook with in general like the food they can mix it with something like with pork or anything.
Okay, so if you're a vegetarian, you can still find like a life there.
Yeah, of course. You can find a lot of good food in like vegetarians.
Nice.
And vegans.
What about like health and fitness? Like to go to the gym, what if you want to go to a morning walk, girls like to go for a walk in the morning. Guys too, actually.
No, actually, where I used to live in, the people were going out for jogging a lot. Like you see, it doesn't matter where age you are, people are very healthy there. They want to. I'm not saying for everyone, at least the people I saw. Like it was a very good neighborhood, like energetic, enthusiastic.
What about health and what about fitness, like gyms and everything?
Yeah, you have the gym. When I went to the gym as well for like a couple of months.
For like 2 days, yeah.
That was the beginning.
Okay. and then you scaled up from there. Okay, cool.
I improved. No, but like when I went to the gym, like you see like people there hardworking. Like as you go to any
people
gym.
are hardworking in every gym.
Exactly.
By the way. You don't have to go to Japan.
I cannot say more about fitness, but
Okay.
like it's.
He's going to talk about things that you've done, right? Okay. That means like he didn't step into the gym. He's just that 2 months, it's a lie. Busted.
I have proof.
Okay. So we were talking about people are running through the streets, having a healthy lifestyle. Talking about running. I'm thinking, sometimes if I wake up at like 6 in the morning, sometimes I would want to run. And it's still dark outside. There are not a lot of people here. What are the safety... Like Netherlands, we are here, like it's such a safe country here. You can just go outside whenever you want. Is it the same situation in Japan? Or like as a girl, do you have to be careful? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Japan is one of the safest countries in the world, actually. And then, for example, like I lost my credit card once when I was going out with my friends, and then I told to my teachers like, "Yo, I lost my card. Is there any way I can get help?" Then the owners of the student stay or the campus said they were notified about my situation, and they called the local authorities if they can find my credit card. And the next day I found it, And so, for example, like there were many situations where people lost some of their personal belongings, and they found it. 90% they found it. So it's a very peaceful area. But there are some situations where there were like really like things go like differently, I would say.
Okay.
For example, like some of my friends, when you go out in the evening, you can go running whenever you want. Nobody will tell you anything. If you're a guy, it's perfect. If you're a girl as well, it's no problem. Anyway, but there are some situations where like girls can get a bit harassed.
Okay.
So like Japanese guys approach them. They're like, "You come with me. I could come in my car."
Is it like the whole in Japan, or was it just the place and experience that you heard?
Well, for example, a friend of mine experienced this, and some of my friends also experienced even worse. To respect their privacy, I'm not going to say more, but I would say like they had a very bad moment with some Japanese people.
Okay.
So in some cases, like women can get a bit of bad experiences in the evening, let's say. But
what about during the day?
Sometimes
any places that you have to avoid, like any parks, like anywhere that you can, it's just better to avoid anything like that.
Sometimes it just happens eventually anywhere. Like you can't. When I lived there, I didn't really experience a particular place.
Right.
But for example, when there was where we went with my friends in a mall, and then we heard from other people like, "Yo, did you hear what happened?" No, there were two girls walking in the mall or like somewhere near the center of Hirakata or like this station. One guy, Japanese guy, approached him and did something very like,
bad.
I mean, it's like embarrassing for me to say, and then he was very like attracted to these girls, and he did something which is like socially unacceptable. And I mean, you get these moments, unfortunately, but yes, there are very rare conditions that actually those happens, but in overall, it's a safe place.
Okay. Drinking, smoking, drugs. Ooh, the gentleman next to me looked at me when I said drugs. Let's start with alcohol. Okay, what are the alcoholic restrictions? Any limitations? Is there anything that I have to keep in mind if I go?
Well, I went there, and then I was informed that actually drinking in public is legal, especially at least where I used.
You're sure about these informations, right?
Well, I had friends who did it. So.
Okay, are you sure that it was labeled as legal?
Well, I mean, when I went to hang out with my friends that they were drinking in public, and the cops were going around, they were not stopped. They were not even questioned.
Okay, but is it a written rule?
I mean,
because we don't want to give the wrong impression.
The thing is that the thing is that I really don't know if it's actually a written rule.
Okay,
but when I lived there, I did. When people were drinking in public, they didn't have any problems.
But still, would you recommend people to not drink in public just to be safe?
If Japanese people, some of them are drinking in public, then why not? Like I'm not saying you should do it. I don't do it personally, but if you see people drinking in public, go for it. I
think that's a good way of putting it out there, because like we're not making a conclusion that you can do this or you can do this. Just saying like what is happening there, right?
I mean, that's at least what I saw and what I observed.
Smoking cigarettes.
Smoking cigarettes, like, there are a lot of. I mean, nowadays they're trying to restrict it because of the Olympic Games in 2020. They're trying to reduce like smoking places on the streets in public, and like for example, but I mean, a lot of people used to smoke where I used to live, and but they're very like clean, so you can't. For example, when my friends were smoking cigarettes, they couldn't throw it in the on the streets. Like in the Netherlands, you can do it. I see a lot of cigarette butts on the streets, but in Japan you can't do that. They even have these small ashtrays where you can like put your cigarettes. You can buy them in a convenience store.
Okay.
And sometimes you get approached. Like my friend got approached, and he was like, "Yo, you can't just throw it like this. You have to throw it in
So
like near the garbage."
Throw it in a bin. Don't be like Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Like. Okay, so we're in the Netherlands. So weed is legal here. Like you can smoke here legally. Weed. You can get high. You can pretend as if you're Snoop Dogg. You can pretend as if you're Wiz Khalifa reloaded. And even like other illegal drugs. It's kind of common here, you know. There's a lot of festivals here. That's why you have like famous DJs like Tiesto, like now Martin Garrix. It is this country. There's a lot of festivals. Drugs are revolve around that. It's not a big deal using a drug here, even if it's illegal. Even if it's illegal, it's not a big deal. And weed is illegal as well. Can you talk a little bit about the drug thing? It's like this is what universities don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about this topic. They're like, oh no, we don't talk about drugs. So if you can just give an insight to people, because there are going to be students who want to try that, and no judgments, that's cool. So what would be your take on that?
Well, Japan is very strict with drugs, I would say. Like, for example, when I was applying for my exchange program, one of the rules that says, like, if you consume any drugs, hashtag marijuana, for example, you will be expelled from the university, you'll be deported back. And Japanese people are like, Japan is very strict in general with any kind of drugs, you would say. But for example, like a friend of mine was hang out with his friends in public, and they were like just enjoying their time, and they were caught being suspicious with drug. They were holding drugs. So instead of like approaching these people to ask them first, that guy just complained to the cop, and then he was like, "Yo, these guys might consume some drugs." So not a lot of people are very acceptable with this, because it's like it's something that can damage you. They see drugs are not very like, for example, there are some things here which can be researched and studied, but there it's just I think it's just a law.
Tea, by the way.
Yeah, it's just the law, I would say. It's very like strict, I would say. So if you're in Japan, just don't really break the rules. Just like follow the rules, like enjoy your time, but like don't do things.
Don't do drugs. It's just like the advice your mom give. This is the time then you actually have to take it. Do not do drugs. What happens if you do drugs and get caught?
You go to prison. You
go to prison,
and then you go to deport you.
You want to go to prison? No.
Then you get deported by the worst case, I would say. But like, just don't do it, I would say.
Okay, so I'm a young guy with a lot of testosterone. Okay. He came back from Japan and he cannot even figure out how to fix a tea. So I'm a young dude with a lot of testosterone. I love girls. Do you? Sometimes.
I'm not gonna answer that, yo.
I'm not gonna answer that. Mom's watching. And you know, like, no, this is actually serious. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, you would wanna experience the dating life, dating in general in Japan. And can you speak from a guy's and a girl's perspective, like everything that you've seen, experienced, just raw, put it out there?
For example, like you can. For example, there are things you just can't do in public. Like for example, when I was getting to know some Japanese people, and we talked about this, and I was a topic, and they said that you can't. I mean, you can just hold your partner's hand.
Hand holding is fine.
But like, if you want to do something like kissing in public or something,
no kissing.
It's like considered rude. So it's
no lip to lip. Can you kiss on the cheek though? Is that fine?
They're just generally shy.
Forehead? Like, can I kiss? No, seriously though, can I kiss my mom?
As long as it's not something like romantic, like sexual, say it's no problem. But
but hand holding is fine.
Yeah, that's the most thing they can accept.
Okay. So what would happen if I'm caught kissing with a girl in Japan?
Nothing would happen to you, but they just will see you differently, like negatively, I would say. Some people, they're like, yo, look at these people, they're not respecting us, or you know.
What's like a typical dating scenario? Like, if I ask a girl out, for example, like, where can I, like, what's like a normal?
The thing is that if you were going out with a girl, it doesn't matter if she's your friend or something. Like, let's say if I was going with my colleague who's a girl, they automatically think you're dating, you know.
Right.
In some situations.
Right.
But
that's
like,
something that, like, Western world don't really focus on. Like if you see a guy and a girl here, we're not going to label them immediately as like a couple or dating. It's just like, oh, it's two people, you know. We don't label, we don't say anything.
But for example, like when in my first day when I arrived in Japan, when I settled, I wanted to go get some groceries and get to know my city.
Yeah.
And I met one girl who's from Canada. And then she's like, who lived in Canada. She's French, who lived in Canada. She's like, and I got to know her.
She's French-Canadian, but in a different way. Okay.
Well, I met her on the first day when we were on the immigration. I said, you're a Kansai Gaida student, I'm a Kansai Gaida student. We were like students in the same university.
University, baby.
And then the next day we met, we just came across and we found each other in the city, in the street, one of the streets. We're like, let's go discover together.
Netflix and chill, yeah.
No. And then at the end,
In the end, what happened in the end?
we were walking a lot, and we decided to get some break, like just rest a bit. And then there's one Japanese gentleman who came up to approach us. He wants to get to know us, and was friendly. I was like, yeah, you can, no problem.
Let's say I'm walking down the street, and I see a Japanese girl, very pretty.
No, you didn't finish the story.
Oh, you did the story, is not.
But just to make it a bit shorter, like when I was with this girl, even though like we were just having a good conversation, and this guy approached us, he automatically thought we were dating.
Right.
So when when he asked me like, are you guys like kind of married or dating? I'm like, no, I just met her the first day. It's our first day we actually met and got to know. It was a bit awkward actually. It's a bit awkward, but you can't really like tell them like something rude because
you can't do that, you know.
You have to respect the elderly there, regardless of. I mean, if it could be a misunderstanding, you're like, it's just a misunderstanding. No, you can't just tell them like, how rude you are. You can't just confront them. You know, it's confronting. Like being direct is not the good idea in Japan.
Okay. So about being direct. Okay. So in the Netherlands, people are very direct here, and it's normal here, right? It's direct. It's normal to be direct in the Netherlands. What about in Japan?
As I said, it's a very collective society. Everyone thinks about each other, and people are very polite. So when you want to approach someone with a problem or situation, you can't just go full direct unless you know the person very well.
Scenario: if I'm a guy, and then I'm like, what am I?
Never know.
Hey, don't judge. So, if I'm walking down the street and if I see this Japanese girl like sitting there, like waiting for the bus, looking at the time, waiting for the time, looking at the bus. No, the other way around. And if I'm like, you know what, I'm just wanna go kick in with her. I'm just gonna say what's up. Just gonna say, yo girl, you wanna go out with me and shit like that. If I can say that in a very polite way, still like a gentleman, is that considered acceptable?
I mean, you could just the thing
for example, there's a lady sitting next to me right now. Like if I hold her hands. And if I'm like, can you go on a date with me? And she's gonna say yes, right? Yes. Is it the same in Japan?
No, you can't do that, bro.
Okay.
First of all, I mean, you could just approach them, say hi. I mean, they're friendly enough to just, have a conversation. Mm-hmm. I mean, not all of them, and the thing is, as I said, you can't really have a conversation because, I mean,
So this is not considered appropriate, what I just did?
In Japan, no.
I cannot pull someone without their permission. That is very rude.
No.
Even she's thinking like, bro, it's even rude here. Like, you didn't ask me for permission. Sorry. Okay.
No, you can't do that. It's I mean, basically, it's you have to respect in a way. They have a different way of approach. So let's say you can just have a conversation like, I'm here as a student. Maybe like have a small talk. If you know Japanese, that's even better. Okay. If you don't, then as I said, the language barrier plays a very big role. But like you can but if you want to act like sometimes people make some jokes. I mean, women get approached in some situations in those ways. It's everywhere. But it's better to not just do that. If you're the one who's have a good sense of humor, let's say, who thinks differently, you have to reconsider the culture because it's a closed, not really that open, I would say.
Okay. Public shaming. And so it was a letter that he received in his university. I don't want to be too loud here because I don't want to bother the people here. That's how they give permission to film. It was something that says that somebody was caught masturbating in public. Wasn't that the thing?
That was actually.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
So basically, what happens is that the university asked or requesting students who were having really bad experiences to consult them if something bad happens. So two of the foreigner students who were in Japan, in my city, at least in the university where I used to go, had a bad experience. So they were just having their own time, and just one random dude who was caught. He just pulled off his
jack off,
and then he did something which is inappropriate, and the girls were like shocked, of course, because it's like very abnormal.
But that happens. Like, there are creepy dudes all over the world. That happens. But tell me what happened as a result of that, like the awareness.
So, for example, the awareness was very high. Like, for example, like they went to the one of the responsible staff who deals with these situations. I don't know the exact name, but like they announced it on Blackboard, which is a student like a platform.
Students will know what it is.
Platform and they announced it. They made it as an announcement of what happened. So if any guy approaches a girl differently and they are both in the university, they would be informed about it. So, for example, there was one situation when one guy did something very wrong with the girl. He harassed her, abused her. No, like even worse. Okay. And then in one of the lectures, they brought the picture of the guy with his name and where he is and what's the thing he did.
Okay.
So they tell you exactly if it's the identity is known. They can even tell you the name or what he is and what.
So they don't really care about exposing someone if you did something wrong.
They say it's the best way to stop them.
That is perfect. That is so true.
Yeah, so it's better to raise awareness about these people so when they see them, they know how they act. But sometimes it can be a bit differently because there might be a misunderstanding, and let's keep it hypothetically because I don't know if that actually happens, but let's say if something happens and there was a misunderstanding, if a girl says, okay, he did something wrong, but at the end it was completely different. Yeah. And the girl, let's say, like, approached the university and said, "Can I keep it private? Just handle it privately." They can still do it. They have the permission to do it.
Okay.
And then they can't do anything about it. So
this is not even about this is not even a video where I'm like we're gonna be like, don't harass people. Like, I don't think that has to be set in a video, but. Just showing you the after effects of what would happen if you do something stupid like that. You're going to be exposed, and probably the shame is going to be lasting for the rest of your lives, okay? And next thing, we can talk about transportation and direction and navigating throughout the city.
Well, Google Maps didn't really help me a lot.
I'm sorry?
Google Maps didn't really help me a lot.
Google Maps didn't help you?
No. Okay. I mean, in some cities it did, but it actually never did.
Why is it that it doesn't help?
I don't know. They have their own like apps which people use it a lot. I mean, for me,
Can you name some?
I mean, I never used them. I just used Google Maps, and I had some Japanese friends who helped me. I was always out with people, so I was always getting to know the directions. And you can also ask some people around; they will guide you in any way. So the people are friendly enough to help you. But everything's in Japanese or most.
Maybe we can look more into the camera though, just a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
I know it's weird, but
shy.
Yeah, shy.
But like everything is basically the signs, the signals was in Japanese. I struggled a lot in the beginning. I was like, where will I go? I mean, there are a few which are like in English, but it's not really that helpful.
And the transportation, like for example, in the Netherlands, transportation is pretty easy to figure it out. Even if you're new here, it's not easy to like buy a ticket, like know the rules. But at the same time, like if you're in some other cities as a foreigner, it's really hard for you to navigate. So as someone from outside, how is transportation in that way? And also, like, if you can mention the prices as well, which you already did a little bit, but...
No, but for the buses, they were quite cheap. Like, we paid, like, $4 for, like, a whole... Like, for something, like, come and go, like, return. And in the beginning, the university actually helps you, like, you get to know how to use the transportation. Like, for example, there's a program called, like, a buddy program, that you can have a speaking partner.
A speaking partner
program that you can have a Japanese person with you. You can like exchange languages, you become friends. So it's a really good way to get to know someone. Not everyone had a good experience with that, but I had a good outcome with it. I had a good speaking partner who showed me around, who helped me a lot. But it's you get at the beginning you'll be like, oh, where shall I go? It's not everything in English, it's all in Japanese. But you'll get to know it eventually. For example, like when you get to know the cities, the name of the cities or the name of the stops, you will figure it out eventually. So it's not really a big problem.
Okay. And is it like expensive, the travels?
I would say like traveling.
Oh, first of all, before that, what are the main modes of transportation in Japan?
Yeah, buses, airplanes.
It's so funny because like this is such a small country, and for someone here, if you say like the mode of transportation is airplane, that's kind of funny because like why would you use an airplane? You use trains here. So Japan's a big country, that's one thing. But like let's say I don't know, man, like.
Taxi is a bit expensive.
Okay, let's say I live a little bit outside the city. Okay, let's say I don't live in the center of the city itself. It's okay. I know that you're looking at the mirror. It's fine. Okay, so I just got checked out by someone. Just kidding. Sorry, I got distracted. You act like so embarrassed. Okay, so what are we talking about? Yeah, let's say I live a little outside the city. Okay, I don't live in the center itself. How can I come to the center? I mean, I know it's a big country, but like me coming to the center, like what is the mode of transportation that I use?
I mean, in Japan, is the city at least I used to live in. They didn't have like a center thing. They had just a train station, and they had the places where you can go. In the train station, it's like their main city center. I would say they have like the most like bars and like places we can go and have you can socialize. I mean, what people do. For me, I used to go to like karaoke places and like karaoke, which is like always near the train station.
Okay.
So, Hirakata, especially where I used to live in, you could just take a bus, and then it goes from. There's a number which can go from like to the train station, wherever you go. It's you can sort it out. But let's say if it's a bit further, you can take the train, which is like a reasonable price. You just like you can buy a card and you can refill it like with 10, even like around 100. Like depends on the amount you want, and it can be perfect enough. It's not that expensive. I just don't remember the prices precisely right now.
What about walking? Because we walk a lot here, and people love walking here.
Yeah, the same thing as there. People love to walk, especially not in Tokyo. Though it's quite crowded, but people love to walk in general, so it's nice.
There are two things that I want to ask you about, and the first thing is about walking. Let's say I live in a decent place, okay? How frequent can you see supermarkets? How frequent is it? And how, like, till what time is it open?
The convenience stores is 24 hours.
Like 7-Eleven, you mean?
Yes, it's like 24
hours. If you live in the United States or Canada or Mexico, you'll probably know what 7-Eleven is.
It's like, well, the convenience stores with us is like 24 hours. You can like go until the evening and you can buy some stuff, no problem.
Supermarkets?
Supermarkets, no, they close until like 9 or 10. Or even like few less, like 7 or 8. Depends on the summer or winter,
and
whatever.
Can I find supermarkets a lot often there?
More convenience stores than supermarkets. But you can find like supermarkets in some areas, but more convenience stores because people just come there and you can have some equipments where you can like, for example, a water kettle. You can like cook some like make some noodles or fry, and you have like ready cooked meals which you can just eat on the way. So they made it easier for people who are just like don't have time to eat or buy some stuff. They can groceries, they can get it. But more convenience stores, especially where I used to live, more convenience stores.
But like, if I want to cook every day, I can't go to the convenience store. I have to go to the supermarket, right? So for that, I hope I can. Can I do it in walking distance, like how I do here?
But if you have a bike, that's even better.
Okay, talk about bikes then, dude.
Because Hirakata, it's a bike city, so like everyone has a bike. You need a bike for it.
And is it safe to ride the bike like in the Netherlands?
I would say that the Netherlands is a bit like you see people from everywhere.
Safer, yeah.
Like Japan has a structure where you can go.
So like it's better, or
it helps you more. Like it's more convenient.
Okay.
But like, if you don't know how to ride a bike, that can be a bit problem. Then you have to walk.
Okay.
Yeah, taxis are quite expensive.
Okay, that's one thing.
So
another thing I want to ask was nightlife.
Well,
bars, clubs, things that you don't do in the club, things that you do in the club.
Well, when I ask my friends when they go to clubs and such, they say, well, we don't have any nightlife like in my city. No, you just have to take a train.
Nightlife is you sitting in your room with your lamp on, off, on, off, on, off, and then you play like I don't know, some heavy metal, and that's it.
No, that's mine. That is. No, I'm joking. But well, my friends, when they ever want to go out for some good time, socialize, we had to take we all had to take like a train to another stop, which is like 30 minutes or something like that, and then 30 to 45 minutes, I would say, and then it's called Namba. And Namba is the place where people go for their nightlife, which is closer to us. Of course, they have in different cities, but that's what was the closer to us. But yeah, I mean, you can do so many things there.
Yeah. What about like approaching women in nightclubs?
Well,
like, how? What can get me in trouble? Like, I don't want to be in trouble.
I mean, if the girl just like, it's the same. Like, if she just doesn't like you, it can be like, she can call the bouncer.
Like, can I like dance with her and things like that if I want to?
I mean, if she wants to, go for it.
Okay, so no, just making sure that if it's not allowed, is it acceptable to do that? If this is not about like if she agrees or not. Like, first of all, if she's not comfortable, you should not do it.
No,
but right? She's like, yeah. But let's say she's okay. She's okay. Let's just do it. But what about like public? Because public display of affection is not really supported in the streets. What about like inside a dark room? I mean, a nightclub, not behind the doors. Of course.
Well, I mean, first of all, like men should also know. We should know how to approach women in some situations, because there are some people who do it very differently.
Creeps,
I would say. But I mean, some guys, what I heard, can approach women if they accept to dance with them. Some say yes, some say no. That's what I was heard. What I was told. But there are some situations where men like in a really, they cross the line, and like they get kicked out. I would say, but that never happened when I saw it. So
okay. So just reading the last things. You said something that really surprised me, which was you mentioned something like there are robots everywhere, like information desk, even in restaurants, even in bars. Like, can you tell me a little bit about that?
No, basically, like that's were the things I was expecting a lot, and that was the reality. Well, I mean, Japan is just like any normal countries, but of course they have some places where it's like amazing. For example, we went to a cookie factory. And instead, when we went to buy some food or we went to get some information, they have these kind of robots which you can click, and these robots can show you the way where it is. That's really cool.
And you can do it in English if you, right?
Yeah, you can. You have multiple languages like German, English, Italian, Spanish, and Japanese.
And you can pick your language.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And they also have some like hotels where there are no employees anymore. Like you can have like just click.
It's like cost cutting everywhere.
Like you just like click on which room you want, and you pay with credit card, and that's it. And in some cases, if it's like love hotels, where
what is a love hotel, by the way?
So basically, love hotels are different from normal hotels. Love hotels is like basically for couples who want to have a good time,
intimacy.
But due to like the culture, they want to keep it secretive. Still, they want to avoid any public shame or it's
because if you do it in public, you're going to be publicly shamed. So if you want to do some couple activities, you have to go to one of those hotels, right?
I mean, that's what people do.
That's what people do. It's like the Taylor Swift song.
And then, I mean, I've done some research about it as well, and like I asked some people around, and you just go there, you click which room you want, and if you were served with food,
you have food inside the rooms.
No. Like for example, when you order for food, the employee there's one guy who cooks for you food. He knocks on your door and he leaves. Because he doesn't want to see your identity, to protect your identity, like to keep it secretive.
So, sorry, just for 1 second. So even if you are, how do you say that? Even if there's a certain level of public shaming, if you want to protect your privacy, if you're like doing something with someone, there are private places where you can do that, and your privacy would be protected that way without being publicly shamed, right?
Yeah.
Because when you say publicly shamed, a lot of people are going to be like, oh my god, like, can I live my life the way I do? Because I'm scared if I don't want to be publicly shamed for all the things.
I mean, basically, like, people will not come approach you and say, oh, this is wrong, but there are some situations which can escalate very quickly.
Yeah.
But I really
escalation is the key. Yeah.
What I like about Japan is that they are, they really care about the people. They care about their privacy, their personal life. They help them settle.
We're almost done, yeah.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, cool.
They settle quite easily. So they help the society in general, but there are some situations where if it gets to a next level, they have to be punished. But that's it.
Okay.
So
So, sorry, we had a little bit of a. We said something that we're not supposed to say, but
okay, so
we were talking about the law and dealing with the police officers. How can we do it? How can I not get in trouble?
yeah, I mean, if you try to just respect the law, respect the culture, act in a polite way with people. I mean, you don't have to like transform yourself to a Japanese, but like you have to know your boundaries.
Okay.
Do some calculations.
Okay.
I think you can settle.
Okay.
But let's say if you were approached by a cop, I mean, some of them then cannot speak English.
Yeah.
But you can just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean it." Try to explain to them in a way they can understand, and I'm sure you'll be fine. But yeah, if you're caught with something which is like, it's something very like criminal or like it's a crime or something, then yeah, you're screwed.
Okay. So talking to the police officer has to be polite.
Yeah, you can't just be direct with them. It's impossible, I would say.
Like how we do it in okay, so if you watch American movies, like it's okay to call a police officer dude. You can be like, dude, I was just standing here, man, I'm sorry, bro. You can talk to a police officer like how you would talk to a friend sometimes, and they're gonna be, I mean, nothing bad's gonna happen if you do it. Like I can be like, hey man, what's going on? Like,
not dude.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard, I don't remember if I called someone, but like I've heard people calling people dudes, and usually it's fine. That's not okay in Japan, I guess. You gotta.
You have to. I mean, you can't just. You have to respect like the elderly, for example. You have to have kind of a boundary where you can talk to.
Okay. So before I ask you like the final question, I wanted to ask you can you say something about like hobbies? Like what are the hobbies that talk about gaming and how prominent gaming is in Japan? But like hobbies in general, what would be some things that you would like to go?
You can go for like skiing in Japan.
Sorry.
You can go skiing in Japan. In the north they have a very good place for when it's snowy. You can go like hiking and you can visit like temples. You can like gaming as well as something. Esports is like booming around as well nowadays. Football is very big. American football is actually quite popular.
American football. Yeah. You don't use your legs.
American football is very popular, I would say. Yeah. So you can do a lot. Like I mean, it depends what you want. But my surroundings, we had like a lot of American football and soccer or football.
Whatever floats your boat. What's like the weather like? I did not ask that.
In the summer, it's like the worst. Like it's very, very warm.
Can you give us some numbers?
Like 30 degrees, 40 degrees.
40 degrees. 40. Not as bad as the Middle East though. So that's a plus point.
No, that's good.
What about the winter? So
it's very cold.
How cold?
Like -2. It depends where you go. Like if you go to the north, it's like -10, -10. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know about Fahrenheit, but yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. Well, use the internet and convert it to Fahrenheit. Just okay. Like if you want to go to Japan, like you have to not be lazy. So use this as a practice and not be lazy. Okay. Okay. So it's like, is it like windy, rainy, things like that, like in the Netherlands sometimes?
At some points, but it's not as like moody, I would say, as like here, for example.
Okay.
You can just never expect when it's raining, or you can expect every day is raining.
Okay, cool.
But in Japan, they have some days which is going to be sunny, rainy.
Perfect. So before I ask you the final question, I wanted to ask you if there is anything you would like to add that you haven't mentioned so far in the last 1 hour of this interview.
Sorry, guys, but I would actually recommend people to check out Japan in the first place. It's a very lovely country, very lovely people, many awesome places to go and check out, explore, and food to try. I mean, I would like to thank you first for interviewing me. I mean, and let me express my experience in Japan. I would like to also wish all the students or anyone who wants to move to Japan a very successful life. If there's anything else you would like to know, leave your comments below. And you can approach one of us privately, and we will
very privately Skype one-on-one.
I would be happy to help you.
I feel like I'm making everything creepy. Like he's trying to like say the professional things, and I want to like add the creepy flavor to that just to keep the balance going.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started off by talking about your expectation, okay? And now, since we have covered this whole thing, what is the reality conclusion after coming back from there?
I think like Japan is, I would say, not what people would brag about in the media. It's just like in any other country that you would go to, but it's different, of course. But it's not what like it brags up in the media. But yeah, like I learned a lot about discipline. I learned about many different types of stereotypes as well. And yeah, there were some things which are true, and there were some things which are very false in general. But it's better for you to check it out yourself in general. But my reality was like, yeah, I learned a lot, and there were some things I was surprised with. There were some things I was a bit disappointed. But in general, I had a very lovely experience, and I would love to go visit Japan soon, I would say.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. I hope we covered everything. I hope we made a, how do you say that, like an objective point of view for everything, and not just having like personalized opinion and making general statements.
So like, yeah, guys, it's just an opinion. So
Just
this
an
is
opinion,
my
yeah.
experience, but I'm sure people have different experiences. But I hope this experience didn't offend anyone. It was just my own opinion. So thank you for your time, and thank you for accepting my...
Thanks a lot, bro. Thanks for the time. Now we gotta do a thing for the thumbnail. We can do this. Just pretend as if it's a picture.
Oh, there.
It doesn't matter. If
Well, I have a blog which I talk about my experience in Japan. So where I traveled around through the country, or like some cities, the big major cities like Hiroshima, Osaka, Tokyo. So make sure you leave a thumbs up. I don't know why we're going there, but like, yeah, please check it out. I'm going to leave it in the comments below as well, or the description, where you can get to know more about my stories and my experience, and hopefully that can help you understand more when you're moving to Japan or traveling there as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoy my blog, and looking forward for your opinions.